What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA channel. And today we are talking about the first UFC event in 2025, UFC Fight Night, Dern versus Ribas 2. Not a fight night in the Apex Center that a lot of people were talking about, but me and Justin spoke about it yesterday, and there were a few fights that I was very excited about. I planned initially to only talk about 3 fights in particular. Well, really 2. But specifically Austin Bashi, and I also really wanted to see Chris Curtis against Roman Kopylov. I ended up watching the entire card, and I loved in the entire card, not including the prelims. I mean the entire main card, and I ended up loving all the fights. So this is now going to be a 6-fight discussion. I'm going to talk through every fight and why I liked it and what were the highlights. So it was pretty cool. We're going to start off at the bottom with Soriano versus Uroš, if I'm pronouncing that name right. I'm not sure if I got it exactly right. But the reason why I wanted to watch this fight is because this is Justin's boy. He trains at Extreme Couture. Justin said he is an exciting fighter, comes out to bang, and that's what we saw. We saw arguably one of the most exciting fights of the night. I think it was like a 30-second finish, or he got the shot that dropped Uroš in about like 26 seconds and then finished it off with a ground and pound. And Justin told me that's how he fights all the time. That's his style. So if you aren't familiar with this guy, Puna, and a very cool guy, he was wearing a Hawaiian Lao during the post-fight presser. So exciting, so much fun. What a great way to start this card. So that was tremendous. Congrats to Puna and congrats to Extreme Couture. Shout out to Justin's gym. All right, moving on to the next fight. This was a disappointment for me because I don't know if you guys heard, but I mentioned this on the show on Friday. Austin Bashi is from my hometown, West Bloomfield, Michigan. He trains in West Bloomfield as well, so he's a Michigan native through and through. He was also undefeated, 13-0. Came in as a fairly heavy favorite, not a huge heavy favorite, but minus 265. But I was really looking forward to this fight. 13-0, thought he was going to win. I felt pretty confident he was going to win. Now, if you're not familiar with Christian Rodriguez, he also gave Raul Rosas Jr. his first loss in the UFC, and he came and did it again. He stopped another prospect at the age of 27. So I was pretty bummed about this fight, and I wasn't sure. It was a close decision. It was 28-27, and I went back and I looked at the stats, and I feel like it was a pretty correct decision in retrospect, as much as I wanted Austin Bashi to win. Got to give it to Christian Rodriguez. He came in very calm, cool, collected. He was extremely relaxed. I thought at times a bit disrespectful, in my opinion, in terms of the way he was fighting and the way he was feinting, stomping the ground, and trying to get a reaction out of Austin, who's, I mean, hey, you got to do what you got to do. Obviously, Austin, I'm sure, had nerves and jitters, this being his first UFC fight. It looked like to me Christian Rodriguez was almost big brothering him in a lot of ways. But you got to give him props. He probably did what he was trying to do, which was get Austin off his game. Austin had a couple of successful takedowns. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do a tremendous amount with them. He did spend a fair amount of time on Rodriguez's back and was trying to make something of those positions, but Rodriguez kept reversing those positions to his credit, and also definitely landed the better of the strikes. A lot of big knees. You could see the damage on Austin's face. But man, Austin is so tough. Remember, he's only 23. That is so young. And especially you're going to see the strength differential and just the overall muscle and build differential that you're going to have with somebody who's that young at 23 versus somebody who's 27, 28, 29, 30. He's fighting grown men. So this is going to be an uphill battle. I hope he's not taking the loss too seriously. Me and Justin spoke after the fight. Justin said hopefully he's going to come back better and stronger. I actually do think he will, because Austin Bashi, of his own admission, said he's been training for 15 years. That's since he was 8 years old. He is a diehard mixed martial artist. I do not think this will break him. I think he's going to go back and train even harder and want to come back and redeem himself. And as I mentioned, he's one of the hottest prospects in the history of the UFC. So he is so tremendously talented, has done such amazing things. He also had an amazing performance on the Contender Series. I think he'll be back. I'd love to see him at some point rematch Christian Rodriguez. I bet you that's a fight that he can and will get back one day. But anyways, a little bit disappointing because I was so hyped on somebody from West Bloomfield, Michigan, but that's how it goes sometimes. That's the UFC. That's mixed martial arts. That's the game. Moving on to the next fight. Holy smokes. I think this was, I don't know. There was actually multiple fights of the night. I think Mackenzie Dern got fight of the night as well. That was an amazing performance. But this fight was crazy. As you can see, it was a finish in round 3 at 4:59. Reminiscent of Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje getting the finish in the last second of the last round. But it was a controversial TKO. And before I even get into how it ended, let me just talk about the fight Round one was super interesting. It was essentially a pure striking match. Chris Curtis was mostly boxing. I think the commentators were saying that Roman Kopylov was also primarily boxing, but you have to mention the leg kicks that he was whipping with ferocious intent and tremendous speed, and the combinations of his striking. He would just lay down a 4 or 5 punch combination like that. It was instantaneous. And in round one, he was having a lot of success. But what's super cool was in round two, Chris Curtis seemed to start timing or reading those combinations. So when Roman started firing off this barrage of punches, he would just shell up, and most of those punches landed in the guard. So I don't believe Roman Kopylov was nearly as effective in round two. In fact, on the judges' scorecards, Chris Curtis won round two. So they were going into round three, 1-1. Now, one thing that has to be mentioned, there were 2 fouls that Roman Kopylov did not get point deductions for either, I don't believe. One was a low blow, and then there was an eye poke. And this is something I need to ask Justin about. You got to think in round 3, a lot of Roman Kopylov strike, and not trying to discredit Roman Kopylov, obviously. I have to ask the question, when the combinations all of a sudden start landing after an eye poke, is that because of exhaustion, or is that because a vision, Chris Curtis's vision was compromised due to the eye poke? And I just don't know what the answer is in terms of the point deduction. I get that it was accidental, but now you have a fighter that's compromised and the other fighter didn't get penalized. So how is that fair? I don't know. That's a question for Justin and other fighters and maybe the referees. Not one that I think I am qualified to answer, but it's just food for thought that I wanted people to consider. As we go into round 3, I will have to say Roman Kopylov definitely got the better of that round, was really piecing Chris up. His combinations were landing. Both fighters were extremely exhausted. So I don't think either they were both gassed, if you will, but equally gassed, I guess you could say. And it makes sense. They were throwing everything at each other. And then that last round, Roman just put together an amazing, I believe it was a right roundhouse, a head kick that caught Chris Curtis and dropped him. Now we get to the controversy of the fight. Roman Kopylov connected, knocked him down, and walked off. He didn't go in to finish him off on the ground. He later said he didn't do that because he knew the fight was ending. He figured he got the victory, and he didn't want to hurt Chris more than he had to. He knows he's a family man, etc. Now, the controversy comes in as that 1 second was counting down. Chris was getting back up to his feet, and the ref waved it off and called it a TKO with 1 second left. I get the ref's perspective. Look, and I don't know what the right call is. I'm not saying I do, and I'm not saying the wrong call was made, but let me give everybody's perspective. I get the ref's perspective. Chris looked extremely wobbled and rocked, and maybe he was trying to look out for the fighter's safety, so he called the fight off. I also get Chris's perspective. He was getting back to his feet. There was 1 second left, and why call it a TKO when instead he at least had a chance to go to the judges' scorecards and see if he would have potentially had a chance to win the unanimous decision. Again, going into that third round, it was 1-1. Would he have won it? I am doubtful of that. I felt like Roman Kopylov was definitely dominant in the third round, but Justin explained to me, even if he wouldn't have won, it looks substantially worse on a fighter's record to have a TKO versus a unanimous decision loss. So I think the main problem and the main reason why Chris Curtis was very upset at the end of that fight and really went off on the referee. And I wasn't sure at first why he was so angry, because I felt like he probably was fated to lose for that fight regardless. But once Justin explained that important minutia, that little detail that, hey, this makes a difference on a fighter's record, I understand Chris Curtis's frustration. But then you have the fact that, well, maybe it ended that way because Roman Kopylov didn't come in and try to finish the fight. It's very complicated. So I feel for Chris Curtis. I even feel for Roman Kopylov. I think people were booing at the Apex Center because of that decision by the ref. It's just very complicated. But at the end of the day, what we can say is, I think this was my favorite, me personally, my favorite fight of the night. I don't know if they got a fight of the night bonus, but it was an incredible fight. And I have massive respect for Roman Kopylov. Just watching somebody, as a Muay Thai practitioner myself, watching somebody with that speed and that precision and the way he just throws his punches and throws the combos so fast. I watched one of his previous fights leading up to this fight. I thought Chris Curtis was maybe going to have the speed advantage, and I was pretty wrong. I think Chris Curtis had the power advantage. But man, Roman Kopylov's striking is crisp and beautiful. And in the third round, by the way, he did get a couple takedowns, at least one that I remember for sure. So he was mixing it up in the last round as well, not purely striking. But anyways, it was a great fight. I cannot wait to see Roman Kopylov fight again. That was a fun fight. Really, really cool. Moving on to the next fight. Whoa, this was crazy. All right, so round one finish. If you guys aren't familiar with Alhassan, you should be, because he is awesome. We look at Alex Pereira against, oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. My fight of the year, and I'm totally blanking. Anyways, Alex Pereira's last fight of 2024, when he fought, I'm losing it. Okay, hold on. I have to look this up because I'm going to lose my mind that I can't remember this. It's on the tip of my tongue. Last fight was against, come on, the striker. Who did he fight? Hold on. Why am I losing my mind here? This is embarrassing. Oh my God. Khalil Roundtree. Sorry, guys. Okay. At his last fight against Khalil Roundtree, right? Khalil Roundtree is kind of a pure Muay Thai fighter and a striker coming in and adopting that style into mixed martial arts and having tremendous success. You could say Alhassan is similar, a Muay Thai fighter coming in and by the way, he even shot a takedown. I think he shot 2 takedowns, but he looked extremely dominant throughout the majority of the fight, actually all of the fight pretty much, except for the end. So I'm going to tell you how it ends. Was insane. So he's going out there just piecing him up, wobbling César Almeida, getting him against the fence, getting him on the ground and pound, boom, boom, boom. César manages to somehow get up, and Alhassan is throwing everything at him, just the most ferocious strikes you can imagine. And I thought it was a foregone conclusion. We were just waiting for the ref to jump in and wave it off. But César Almeida, through this firestorm of strikes, just kind of keeps his composure, boom, boom, gets hit on one side, and then he kind of postures up, sits down on a left hook, I believe, and just boom, throws it, pinpoint accuracy. And because Alhassan was throwing with just reckless abandonment, he left himself open, just no guard up, just bop, bop, throwing as hard as he can, looking for that finish. And so no guard up, boom, César takes his time, picks his shot, one clean shot straight to the jaw, knocks him out, just fall. Alhassan went straight back, stiff as a board. Kind of, if you remember when Jake Paul knocked out Tyron Woodley and he kind of went stiff, but he went forward, Alhassan just went straight back. It was crazy. So I was rooting. I didn't really know too much about either guy, but when I saw the fighting styles, I was rooting for Alhassan. But man, you got to give massive credit to César Almeida. He improves his record. I think he's now, he was 7-1. I think he's now 8-1. I'm not sure, but holy smokes, that fight was crazy. I'm sure these guys had to have gotten some sort of a bonus. Wild, wild fight. Brazil versus Ghana. Moving on. Ponzinibbio versus Harris. This was an interesting fight as well. Ponzinibbio, as tough as they come, same as Harris. What was interesting about this fight is the way that Carlston Harris fights is definitely, at least in the latter round, he was doing a lot of work with his lead left, just constantly throwing jabs and shots with that. At one time, throwing almost an open hand palm strike. That's what it looked like to me. I wonder if he had an injury on his right hand that was preventing him from throwing punches or wanting to throw too many punches. I don't know. This is just a theory, but it seemed bizarre the way he was boxing and the way he was striking. But anyways, Ponzinibbio definitely took some damage. Both guys took damage back and forth. It was a crazy back and forth fight. And then in that third round, he started catching him, started wobbling him, and just started laying down a barrage of punches until the ref finally stepped in and waved it off. Harris did protest the stop a little bit, but I think it was clear Ponzinibbio was on his way to a finish, and he was looking out for fighter safety. So there you go. This was another great fight. I can't remember either if they got a fight of the night bonus or anything, but the whole card was really impressive. And now we get to the main event. So Mackenzie Dern, the last fight that I saw was back in, I may have missed one of her fights, but I saw back in, I think it was January of 2024. So almost a year ago. And as we know, she's a jiu-jitsu specialist. Her striking may not be the strongest part of her game, of course, and even sometimes her takedowns haven't been very strong in the past. It seemed like she has done tremendous work, at least since I saw that last fight, and her entire game looked very, very crisp. Her striking looked really good, and it was accurate striking with a purpose, really spending a lot of the first round on her feet, setting up that first takedown. Didn't get a chance to do a lot with that top position at the end of the first round, but kept slugging it out. Amanda Ribas had top position later on in round 2, but Mackenzie was looking for a lot of submissions in round 2. So it was back and forth, but I believe Mackenzie was winning on the scorecards into round 3. And then at the very end of round 3, she was trying to get an armbar in round 2, but just couldn't seem to get it. And then in round 3, at the very end, she was trying to get something from the bottom, then gets on top, gets mount, and then with 16 seconds left, boom, grabs her arm and just like pries it apart from the other arm. And with, I think, maybe 12 seconds or 10 seconds left, she pulls off a really hard armbar, and Amanda Ribas immediately taps, and the fight was over. And it was so cool. So even this final main event was a massively exciting fight. She's at number 6, moves up to where, I don't know, maybe number 4, maybe number 3. And Mackenzie Dern is such a star in the UFC. I feel like so many people know who she is and are such big fans of her, both for her fighting style, but also her personality. She's very bright, happy, always smiling. She's a darling of the jiu-jitsu community. I think that's really cool. And I love seeing the evolution of her fighting style and her fighting game, now working again with Jason Perillo, her striking coach, and coming along on that front as well. So this makes a really, really exciting fighter at strawweight. Let's see what she can do. I'd love to see her fight for a title, and especially come into a title fight with this really well-rounded game. So anyways, that's it. A lot of fun. Had to make this video. Wanted to share my thoughts with everybody. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you did see it and thought it was awesome, let me know. Or if you disagree, let me know as well. Or if you're watching this video and then now you're going back to watch it because I've spoken so highly of it, that would be cool as well. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.